is Peace Action, as well as About Face and Vets for Peace. I want to welcome everyone to tonight's important webinar. People may or may not be aware of the fact that on April 20th of this year, 150 veterans and military families occupied the rotunda of the Cannon House office building in Washington, D.C., specifically to protest the Iran war. This protest by veterans and former soldiers comes in a long line of uprisings and protests of soldiers in various American wars that have always had a strong impact on that war. In fact, for the Vietnam War, it's pretty clear that active duty GIs and veterans in the last several years of the war were actually responsible for ending that war, mainly because the Army would not fight anymore. In the Iraq War, of course, we had veterans coming back and starting the Iraq Veterans Against the War, but one of the main sources of resistance to that war came from military families. In other words, the families of the guys that were fighting in Iraq. Right around here, of course, people remember Nancy Lesson and Charlie Richardson and their lead role in bringing that group together, which had a tremendous impact on public opposition to the war. And then, of course, we had Melida and Carlos Arredondo. Their son had been killed in Iraq, and they were tremendously active and spoke constantly all the time, and joined up with Iraq Veterans Against the War. So we've got this tradition. We've also got, of course, Smedley Butler going back to the 1920s, talking about how wars of empire are just a racket. So we're in the Iran War now. This webinar acknowledges and explores the resistance of enlisted soldiers and veterans to this new illegal war. The webinar also takes up the issue of war crimes committed by the American military, including the destruction of Iranian culture and murder of thousands of people, but also the psychological impact of fighting these wars on the soldiers themselves. We're going to be featuring an organization tonight called About Face. It's a group of active duty soldiers and veterans organizing to end the U.S. foreign policy of permanent war. Originally, they were called the Iraq Veterans Against the War, and these days, we are fortunate they are speaking out against U.S. wars based on lies, and they are advocating for active duty and returning veterans since that time. And they will hopefully be playing a major part, and are already starting to play a major part in the resistance to the Iran war. Now, tonight, we're very fortunate. We have 3 Iraq veterans speaking, plus John Shushard, who turned in his commission as a first lieutenant in 1965 because of that war of aggression and because of its illegality as well. And then we have Nancy Goldner, a licensed social worker who founded the group Returning Veterans Response Network back in 2007. I'm going to introduce those folks when they speak, but to get us started tonight, I want to ask Bahar Sharafi to frame this war for us, so that we're not just talking about in theory. We're talking about something that is very real, very important, very, very devastating. And to give us a sense of what we are talking about when we're talking about the Iran war and Iran, we're going to turn it over to Bahar. Bahar is an Iranian American activist born in Tehran, and she has family still there. She lives now in Dorchester, Massachusetts. She is a member of the board of directors of the Massachusetts Peace Action, and she is also on the kind of a volunteer director of the National Iranian American Council
in Massachusetts.
And a co-founder of Congressional District 8, which is an anti-war formation in Congressional District 8. So she's very active, and we depend on her a lot to give us background on what's happening in the war and to give us leadership of our movement in resisting that war. So, Bahar, we'd like to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Paul. It is great to be part of this panel. This is a really important topic. Most of the focus of this webinar is going to be on moral injury. So I want to take a minute here to talk about moral crimes and the victims of those crimes, because in my opinion, that is who needs to be centered in every conversation. This war started on February 28th. Am I sharing my slides? Or do you see a black thing?
You just hit share.
It's a space where the slides should be, but the slides themselves aren't there yet.
Oh,
Try it one more time.
okay, stop share. Oh, just a minute. What is this?
There we go.
No, that's just my desktop though. Let me exit full screen and maybe that is better. Okay, how about now?
There you got it.
Yep. I've got it.
Okay. Somehow it goes away if I make it full screen, but I guess that's okay. So this war started on February 28th with a triple tap strike on an elementary school in the southern Iranian town of Ninab near the Strait of Hormuz. It was a Saturday, which is the first day of the work week in Iran. And it was 11 a.m. Kids were in school. Their school was directly targeted 3 times with Tomahawk missiles. 155 people were killed in that attack. 120 of them were elementary school children. 2 hours later, a hospital, the only well-equipped hospital in that town, was also targeted. Immediately after, the US administration, Western media, and the fake news machinery went into gear. They said that the missiles were from the IRGC, that the school was adjacent to an IRGC base, that there was a missile silo underneath the school. None of these things were, of course, true. It's not like this is the first time that we are hearing this sort of thing. On the same day, in the town of Lamerd, also in southern Iran near the Persian Gulf, the US struck a sports center where teenage girls were playing basketball and volleyball. 21 people were killed in that attack, including this little girl. She was 2. Her name is Avina. Later, we learned that these were new missiles that were developed by Lockheed Martin. They They detonate mid-air and explosively release hundreds of thousands of pellets to maximize death and destruction over a large area. So this is what the streets and buildings of La Merde look like from the shrapnel. You're literally testing your weapons on the bodies of our children. I don't believe for a second that any of these are accidents or mistakes. We have watched Israel do this to Palestinians in Gaza and to Lebanese people for almost every day for the past 3 years. When they can't defeat our militaries, they target our civilians, our civilian infrastructure, our police stations, our hospitals and ambulances and pharmaceutical plants and vaccine depots. They are mercenaries to sow chaos and destroy society. Why? Because that is the goal. The goal is to destroy Iranian society, to destroy Palestinian society, to destroy Lebanese society. And I want to be very clear that this war is not over. There isn't a ceasefire in place. Just this week, both US and Israel carried out strikes in Iran. The US still maintains an illegal blockade on Iranian ports. And one of the reasons that the war is not over is that Israel wants to be able to murder Lebanese people whenever and wherever it wants. Of course, one of the other reasons is that war with Iran is extremely and perennially popular with politicians on both sides of the aisle in this country. Here in the US, most people don't really feel the effect of the war. Maybe stuff is more expensive, but it really doesn't make that big of a difference. But for people in Iran, it is exhausting. I want to read a text message that I got yesterday from a loved one in Iran. I'm not scared by war, nor do I care about it. I simply don't have the emotional capacity to be continually terrified when it's been going on for so long. Us in Iran, we have experienced emotional exhaustion and just don't care anymore. I saw this attitude in other people I've talked to as well. And I just can't imagine what this feels like to people in Gaza, to people in the West Bank, to people in Dahir, and in South Lebanon. Our people are really exhausted. And in that, I want to wrap up really quick by telling you a little bit about the film that we're about to watch together. Last August, when I was going to Iran, Cole asked me to bring back footage so that we can show Americans what Iran looks like, what Iranians look like, that we have modern and bustling cities and trains and beautiful places and subways that are clean and run on time, unlike the T. And we do have those things, but I want to be clear that even if we didn't have any of those things, our lives would not be any less valuable, and we wouldn't have any less of a right to sovereignty over our own homeland. But more than anything, this short film is a love letter from me to my home. And I want to give a huge shout out to Randy. I don't know if he's here, but without his editing and production, amazing editing and production abilities, this would not have come together. So I hope you enjoy it.
I go back home to Iran at least once a year. I was there last in late August and early September. My family lives in North Tehran. A lot of people there are middle upper class, very westward looking, the sort of people that Americans would potentially recognize as, quote, like them. In recent years, I have tried to incorporate travel around the country into my trips to Iran. I was able to go on a 2-day tour of Semnan province in August. Because of its location on the southern slopes of the Alborz Mountains, it has a very interestingly diverse geography. You can go from desert to cloud forest to lush green in the space of an hour. We stayed the night in a nomadic resort. We were a group of around 25 people and slept in a large tent of the sort that Iranian nomads used to live in. The land and the facilities belonged to a lovely family. Their 2 daughters took us on a short hike to watch the sun set over the mountains. The next morning, we woke in the dark and went on a drive to watch the sunrise over the cloud forest, one of the most beautiful scenes I have ever seen. We drove back down through the lush plain of Opert, which was the traditional summer pasture of the Sangaseri tribe. Pastures are threatened by climate change, especially due to water scarcity threatening this way of life. One of the things I love about traveling to the provinces is that you see all these people who are trying to preserve their culture and their way of life under very difficult circumstances. The house with the courtyard, the pomegranate tree, and the Iranian-style tea was actually a rug museum. Sangaseris have a distinct style of rug making that involves no dyeing of the wool. Instead, they use all the natural colors of the wool that are different shades of brown, beige, tan, grey, and black. Sangasar itself is an ancient town. Its history goes back to the first millennium BC. Its entire population remained Zoroastrian until the 16th century when they were forcibly converted by the Safavid dynasty. Later in the 19th century, many became Baha'is. I also made a trip to the city of Tabriz in East Azerbaijan province. Tabriz was a part of the ancient Silk Road and the capital of multiple dynasties in the 15th and 16th centuries. Its Grand Bazaar is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Tabriz is known for its amazing food, wonderful fruits, its very lovely and polite people, and its gorgeous rugs. Unfortunately, Iranian rug making is a dying art. Because rugs are expensive and people just buy machine-made rugs, US sanctions make it difficult to export. When you walk around the old city, you feel that you're stepping into history. You can almost see the caravans of the Silk Road bringing their goods to the Grand Bazaar. While there, we also visited Masjid-e-Kabud, or the Blue Mosque, which is actually a mausoleum complex built for a 15th century king and his consort. It was mostly destroyed in a 19th century earthquake and was reconstructed and restored in the 1940s. The careful reconstruction only used the original tiles and other elements to preserve the historic character, but also because the tile-making skills that existed in the 15th century did not survive into the 20th century. Most of my favorite areas of Tehran are located in the center. Those are some of the oldest neighborhoods, and you don't see a lot of tacky new construction. Those are also some of the areas that have received much of the brunt of the US-Israeli bombings. British and Russian embassies are located in one of those neighborhoods, and they each take up an entire block. Tells you something about who ran the place in the 19th century. Next to the vast complex that is the British Embassy, there is a street named after Bobby Sands, the Irish Republican and member of British Parliament who died on hunger strike in Margaret Thatcher's prison. The name is written in Persian and then transliterated back to English by whoever made the street signs, hence the funny spelling. I think that one of the things that people don't get about the Iranian Revolution of 1979 is that no matter how you feel about it or what you think about the course that it ended up taking, it was a struggle for national liberation at a time that many other national liberation struggles were ongoing or fresh in memory. And for that reason, there's a legacy of internationalism and anti-imperialism, including solidarity with Irish Republicans. It is quite something to be in the US and watch it destroy one's homeland. To see places that you love being turned into piles of rubble, to see people, men, women, and children murdered in Tabriz, Tehran, and elsewhere, to see the poisoning of the environment, to see our national and world heritage sites being damaged and destroyed. A 1,400-year-old fortress in Luristan, 16th century mosques with gorgeous tilework in Isfahan, and beautiful Qajar-era palaces in Tehran. These aren't just the legacy of Iranians, they are the legacy of humanity. I have seen some individuals say that mosques and palaces in tiles don't matter, that they can be rebuilt. They cannot. We do not have those skills the artisans had in the 16th, 18th, and 19th centuries. They are lost forever. One of the interesting things for me about being in Tehran is that people are just out and about at all hours of the night. Especially noticeable is that you can go to a playground at 10 p.m. and it might still be full of children. I wonder now about where those children are, if there's still hustle and bustle. Before I went to Iran last August, I was asked to take photos and videos that would, quote, humanize Iranians to Americans. I think you should know that we are human, no matter what we wear and what histories we have. But we do have a very long history, thousands of years in fact, on this land that we named Iran. And we have very diverse cultures, gorgeous and diverse landscapes and architecture, and beautiful people. On one of my last nights in Tehran, we attended a little cafe concert by a group of young Turkmen musicians from Gonbad in Golestan. They had performed earlier that day at a concert hall, and we were lucky to catch them at a semi-private event. Afterwards, we were speaking with friends we met up with about how unique it is and how blessed we are that Iranians come from many different traditions and cultures and speak different languages, and yet we all know that we are Iranian.
Well, welcome everyone, and we're in very interesting times in more ways than one.
Can you cut it off
this
there?
is a group that began.
Sorry, it started playing another video.
That would have been a good video to listen to, but we don't have time. Thank you so much, Bahar, and for setting the stage here for our discussion tonight, and also to let people know that the Bahar's video of Iran is available for people to borrow, or we can send you a link so that you can show it to your groups if you think it will be of interest to them. Okay, so with that,
I think Bahar had more commentary.
did you want to make any last? No, okay. With that, let's turn to Kevin Benderman. Kevin is a board member of About Face and served 10 years in the U.S. Army. First deployed to Iraq in March 2003. That was right at the beginning. He refused to return for a second deployment because of the lies that preceded the invasion, the harm being done to the Iraqi people, and because it went against everything he thought it meant to be a soldier. Denied conscientious objector status, he was court-martialed, confined for 15 months, dishonorably discharged, and stripped of all his benefits. It's with this background that Kevin comes to us tonight to give us his reflections and to tell us about FACE. Kevin?
Well, thank you, everyone, and I appreciate you allowing me to take the time to speak with you on this very important webinar tonight. And as Paul said, I was a 10-year Army veteran, and once I came back from my first deployment from Iraq, I figured out that I can no longer take part in such an atrocious action that we were taking against the people that had never done anything to us. And now we're here in 2026. We are seeing the same thing take place with this invasion and a looming occupation of Iran. And we decided that we would let our voices known as an organization on April the 20th, as was put out in the introduction. And we went to Washington, D.C. and occupied the Cannon House rotunda, where we formed up and demanded that Mike Johnson come down and acknowledge the fact of the all the deaths of the Iranian civilians, especially the Manab school that was struck, as Bahar said in her portion of this meeting. Then what was it? I believe 175 people were killed in that attack. So we went there and to make our unequivocal opposition known to them, to everyone in DC, about why we oppose going into this war, because it's just more of the same. It's a continuation of what we started in Iraq with the global war on terror, and I believe that this is just a continuation of it. And if you don't mind, I would like to post a link for About Face in the chat. So if anyone has any more, questions or information or more things they would like to know about Face Veterans Against the War, I just put this link into the chat. But also during the demonstration that we had in the Cannon House Often building, everyone was holding a red tulip, to indicate the number of people and to honor the people of Iran who have been killed in this needless and unnecessary invasion and war that was started under the Trump regime. And so personally speaking, I just can't see continuing to maintain the same posture militarily and spreading our imperialism across the world by invading and occupying countries just for the purpose of stealing their natural resources. And so that's the main gist of why we occupied the Cannon House building that day, to make Congress aware of our displeasure and opposition to this war. And we also demanded that Mike Johnson come down and receive the flag that was folded during that ceremony. So as a signifier for all of the needless death that have occurred since this invasion. So, Oh, goodness. So, and as we said, we collaborated with Military Families Speak Out. We collaborated with the Center on Conscience and War. We collaborated with Common Defense, 5051 veterans, and we all came together because it's going to take each and every one of us working together, standing side by side, to continue to push back against this and let them know that we are not going to tolerate all of our resources be spent on attacking other countries and harming other people that have never done anything to us. So that's the gist of our reasoning for holding that action in Washington, D.C. on April the 20th. And
Kevin, could I just ask you, Kevin, whether you've been hearing from active duty soldiers? Have they been in touch with about FACE, about the war, about their situation?
we have reached out to quite a few active duty, and we have got some contact back, but I believe Michael Preisner with the Center on Conscience of War has more information on the number of active duty that have been reaching out to them for assistance and information on what they can do if they are feeling like their conscience will not allow them to take part in this Iran invasion.
Okay, well, we'll hear from Mike a little later on. Thank you, Kevin. Maybe we should turn it over to Jeff Parenti. Jeff, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Jeff is local and works with many of us on on these attempts to wake people up to what's going on and to organize opposition. So Jeff, thanks for being with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you to everyone for being here. So I just wanted to let everybody know about the things that we have been up to in our area as Veterans for Peace and as About Face, because I'm a member of both organizations. So we have actually been helping out. One of the things we've been doing is to help out with a exhibit called Eyes Wide Open. And it's something that military families speak out, which Kevin mentioned earlier about the April 20th event that they were there with our members. So this exhibit is put on by military families speak out, and NIAC and MAPA, and both of our organizations. And it's just a memorial for the people killed at the Manab school bombing. And it's a very powerful exhibit. And it's actually made it into the news a few times, some of the places we've taken it, or that it has been taken, I should say. It's been at No Kings 3, it's been at Wake Up the Earth in JP, and it was at our Memorial Day event. And a lot of people stop and look at it, and I think it's really helping our local community to, as Bahar was saying, to humanize the people of Iran. So I'm really proud
I'm
of
just trying to
being a
listen
part
in.
of
You guys,
assisting with that.
come on up.
So another thing that we did is on Memorial Day, we went to Park Street, marched up to the Soldiers and Sailors Monument as About Face and Veterans for Peace. And we, some of our members gave speeches about why they turned against the wars, friends that they had lost. And then we went down to the exhibit and called out the names of all of the children who were killed at the Manab school. And that was right next to, if you've ever been to the Commons on Memorial Day, it's right next to the Field of Flags. So we had a lot of eyes on that and got some attention there. And I also wanted to say that coming up, we have an action that we will be doing as a national organization on July 4th. And so we'll be doing that to protest all of the jingoism of that particular day. And if anyone is not aware, again, around here, the following week is Fleet Week. And there will be a bunch of Navy ships in Boston, and we're still working on things, but our local members are planning on going down to Fleet Week and trying to talk to the people that are in town, the service members, the sailors and Marines, and trying to convince them to look into becoming conscientious objectors and refusing illegal orders. And that's about it, except for, if it's okay, I would like to post another link in chat. This is a fundraising link for About Face for us to get some money together to send people from across the country into Philly for July 4th. We're hoping to get a big turnout to that, but we will need some support.
Well, thank you, Jeff. That sounds like a great event, and that's good if you can put that in the chat. Just to let everybody know two things. One, we are recording the program, and so if you would like to see it later on, you'll have an opportunity to get a link to it. But also with that recording, we will include the various websites and other sources of information related to tonight's webinar. So you'll be getting that as a separate email attachment within a few days of the webinar. So let us now move on to Nancy.
Sorry, I have a quick question because the chat.
The chat is only open to communicating with the speakers, not with each other. Sorry. And the other thing I wanted to mention is everyone will get a chance to ask questions at the end. But we want to make sure we hear from each of the speakers first. So please, I hope you have questions, and I hope that you will be holding on to them and asking them by using the raise hand function, which we'll explain at the time. But to continue the program, let's go to Nancy Goldner. Nancy is a licensed social worker, and she's been an anti-war activist since the Vietnam War. She has supported the emotional recovery of veterans from trauma of America's endless wars since she founded the Returning Veterans Response Network in 2007. And so Nancy is going to talk a little bit about the impact that these wars have on the soldiers themselves. Nancy?
I wanted to let people also know that I've been involved with About Face, starting when it was Iraq Veterans Against the War. When I lived in New York City, I volunteered at the office. I provided an opportunity for counseling as needed during the Winter Soldier, Iraq, and Afghanistan hearings. So I've been connected to About Face, as it is now called, for a very long time, and I will continue to be. I'm wondering, as people were hearing from Bahar, and she was showing her slides, and then, of course, this extraordinary video, what you were experiencing, what was coming up for you, what feelings? I'm not going to ask you to say, I just want you to think about that. But also think about, what about the enlisted men and women who are taking part in this war? They joined for a bunch of reasons, but especially out of a sense of patriotism for many of these young people, out of a family tradition that could go back generations, out of a desire to sort of contribute something to the world larger than themselves. And then they end up taking part in war crimes. And as Kevin said, this was not But being a soldier, what he understood it was about. So that presents these young people with an incredible moral dilemma. And it leads to what a psychiatrist named Jonathan Shea conceptualized as moral injury. And he laid out 3 components of that. A betrayal of what is right. And it's a betrayal by someone who holds legitimate authority in a high stakes situation, like life and death, as we are seeing in those slides. Although the VA recognizes moral injury as a psychological condition, as distinct from PTSD, it does not have disability status, which is interesting and significant in terms of what happens after people leave the military. I just want to say, in my clinical experience, that the parallel to the moral injury experienced in wars is the betrayal of trust by authority figures in our families, our schools, and our workplaces. And this is a violation of trust. And it takes place in relation to young people who they are supposed to be protecting. So that is the betrayal. When those we are supposed to be able to count on to protect us and take proper care of us, betray us by causing us harm, that is a profound wound psychologically. So I considered that the parallel to the moral injury that the young people in the military are experiencing, because they are having to obey or orders which go against who they see themselves as, why they joined the military. It's a tremendous betrayal of a sense of who we are. I will say that there is healing, and the healing is through learning self-compassion, self-protection, and not blaming oneself for what happened. But aside from therapy, Kevin Benderman is going to talk now and tell you his much more radical and life-changing response to moral injury in a time of war. Thank you. Kevin.
Yes, well, I guess I can go back briefly to sitting at the motor pool at Fort Hood when the reports came down about September the 11th and the first plane had hit, and then we got to see the second plane hit the tower in DC. And so that changed the climate of Fort Hood. I mean, you could have heard a pin drop across that entire base, and there's 2 divisions there. So there's a lot of soldiers and a lot of family members and a lot of civilian people that work on that base. So it was very quiet that day. And then we started getting orders about being sent to Iraq when I was sitting in the primary leadership development course in 2002. And they started telling us we were going to be deployed to Iraq before Easter, before summer break, and every so often they would come down and tell us we were going to be deployed to Iraq. And at that time, I was thinking to myself, well, what does Iraq have to do with anything? Because from what I understood, everybody was associated with Afghanistan, and Osama bin Laden himself is a Saudi Arabian national, so, and a member of the royal family, from what I understood. But then they had us deployed to Iraq in March of 2003, and some of the very first things they had us doing had me questioning why we were even there. My first mission after we got into the country of Iraq was to guard an oil well. And we stayed there for 2 weeks, and we were pretty much the only people in that area, aside from a few people out tending their sheep flocks or sheep herds. So, and then after we moved from that area, we just started going to people's houses and taking them out at 3 o'clock in the morning, zip tying their hands and putting them on trucks, being sent to detention centers. I mean, or black sites. I'm not sure where most of those people or any of those people wound up that we took out of their homes, but that added to what I would call moral injury, because I always thought that if my country had asked me to go to war, it would be against another fighting force. It wouldn't be against a civilian population in a country that had never done anything to anyone here in the United States. And, as we were moving north through the country, we were constantly running into things like that I question on a lot of the tactics and what their thinking was when they were having us or giving us orders. After we had been there for about 6 months, we arrived in a town called Konakan along the Iranian border, and that was going to be our command post. And so the company commander and the first sergeant had located a building they wanted to use as a command post, and they ordered us to clean it up and secure it. And while in the process of doing that, some of the kids from the town would climb up on the wall and laugh and point and ask questions and be talking amongst themselves, and we would shoo them off the wall. And they kept climbing up there, so we kept chasing them away. And one day the captain came out of the building and told me to shoot those children if they climbed back up on that wall. And they were 8, 9, 10-year-old kids, would be my guess. I mean, they were not in any danger to any of us. And that's just another thing that they told me that that added to my sense of betrayal, that my country would be giving me illegal orders of that manner to murder children, And so there was no way that I was going to do that. But I mean, all this stuff added up to the betrayal. And then once I came back and they were getting us ready to go for another deployment, that's when I decided to file for conscientious objector status, because there was no way that I was going to go back and take part in that again. I just couldn't do it. It goes against everything I stood for as a soldier. It goes against my conscience and, as a human being. And so it was just, beyond my belief. I mean, that they would even ask me to do anything like that. And I could probably talk with y'all about this for the next hour, but just leave it to say there's a giant sense of betrayal from the United States, that I feel toward the United States for having us go over there and invade and occupy a country of people that have never done anything to us. And I will say that the longer I was there, the more I saw that the Iraqi people were just like, we don't want the United States dictating our lives. We don't want Saddam Hussein dictating our lives. We want both y'all to go away and leave us alone. And that was the sense that I've got from the majority of the people that I encountered when I was in Iraq. And thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, for letting us know about all those experiences. And you certainly paid the price for refusing to continue to kill people. So thank you for that, and thank you, Nancy. And is Mike Prisoner here?
I am.
Oh, great. Mike, welcome. We're very happy you could join us. Mike is the Executive Director of the Center on Conscience and War. He joined the U.S. Army just before 9/11 and took part in the invasion of Iraq. When he returned home, he got involved in the struggle against the war, leading civil disobedience against the occupations of Iraq and Afghanistan. Many of the active duty soldiers who accessed the media he has produced, including the podcast Eyes on the Left, have become war resistors. And so, Mike, we very much appreciate you being with us, and we're all ears to hear what you have to tell us.
All right. Thank you. Well, first of all, it's very cool to be speaking with Massachusetts Peace Action. I spent a better part of my childhood in Sutton, Massachusetts, and went back frequently to visit when I was in the Army, stationed in upstate New York. So it's like another home to me in my nomadic life. But yeah, I'm relatively new to CCW. I took over as executive director in February, just kind of right at the outset of the Iran conflict. But I've worked with active duty members of the military and conscientious objectors, anyone in the military who is anti-war in any way, for a very long time, since I myself was a soldier in the Army, and I got out in 2005 and began that journey then. And so I do want to give a little bit of context about conscientious objection, because it helps set the stage for where we are now, and the information I'm going to be giving you is how it relates to the Iran war. Now, CO status is basically rights in DoD regulations that say if you have a firm, fixed, and sincere opposition to war in any form, that you are entitled to not be in the military. If you're already in the military, you get an honorable discharge. If there's a draft, you're exempt from that. And there have been conscientious objectors throughout the entire history of the United States. In the Revolutionary War, they were conscientious objectors. I'm sure there's some Quakers on the call. I don't have to tell all of you, but the earliest documented conscientious objection acts was in like 1638 by Quakers who not only refused to carry weapons and form militias to be part of the native extermination campaign, but refused to even build forts for the military to use in that campaign. But for most of that time and most of that history, conscientious objectors were not treated very well by the U.S. government. This kind of culminated in World War I, when, of course, there was a draft, and there were many, many COs, and many COs did not survive the detention that the U.S. military put them in, and not just mistreatment and abuse, but what you would rightfully call torture. There is even a famous case of two brothers from a Hutterite community, which are Christian communities throughout the United States, that not only were they, essentially tortured to death in military prison for being pacifists, but their bodies were returned home to their community, and their religious faith is a pacifist religious faith. They do no military service. Their bodies were returned home in their military uniforms, which they were jailed for refusing to wear. So that was the kind of attitude the U.S. government had towards COs through World War I. And so it was in that kind of the degradation and the outrage of the World War I era that caused the predecessors to Center on Conscience and War to form a coalition of different religious faiths and organizations that wanted to defend and advance the rights of conscientious objectors in the United States. And so CCW came from that tradition. It's an organization that's been around for over 85 years now. And through that period, there was a lot of progress made, right? Like World War II, COs were given alternative service and alternative duties that played an important part in the war effort against the Nazis, but did not require people to kill or be a part of killing in any direct or even indirect way. But conscientious objection, even through the Vietnam, it was a religious designation, and it dealt primarily with people who were drafted, right? CO was something that if you had a religious training and belief, a religious upbringing, you were a member of a religious faith that prohibited military service or the use of violence, then you could qualify as a CO. And the vast majority of people applying for CO were people from those faiths who then were drafted involuntarily into the military. Challenges to the Supreme Court in 1970 changed that whole game. And that's great strides legally were made for COs that made it to where the regulations consider religious belief as any deeply held moral or ethical belief. And so COs today and COs since 1970, you don't have to be religious. You can be an atheist. You can be whatever you want. It matters what you believe and that you have a deep and sincere opposition to taking part, not even in violence in general, but in warfare and in the violence involved in the organized killing of people in warfare. But the other big change since 1970 is not only it was opened up to people who were not religious, but they did away with the draft. And I'm sure I don't have to tell most of the people on this call who lived through the Vietnam era, they got rid of the draft because it wasn't working out too well for them. And there was the Pentagon's own assessment is about half of the armed forces were in some kind of mutiny or had defected to the anti-war movement by the end of the war. So COs in the modern era were in an all-volunteer military. And so the process of becoming a CO today is that you can't just say, well, I was raised a Quaker, and so I'm a CO now. Well, you joined the military voluntarily, so they couldn't have been that deeply held or sincere beliefs, so you don't qualify. So today, conscientious objectors is for people who went through some kind of profound transformation since they joined. Kevin described, I think, one common example of that transformation. You have deeply held beliefs that allow you to join the military and make you feel that what you are doing is good and just. And then you have a shift in your consciousness and you develop very opposite beliefs. There are regulations that accommodate those people. So if you are a member of the military who joined as a true believer and you wanted to go to war and all of these things, even if you've never been to war, if you go through some kind of major shift in your morals and your ethics, you are entitled to an honorable discharge. That is good. Kevin, of course, went to jail for a year and a half. That is typically not the outcome of a CO application. And there's reasons why it went that way for Kevin. But when you file a CO packet, you are the way that it's supposed to work is that your beliefs are accommodated until that packet is approved. And so since in the modern era, since the Vietnam War, I think people would be surprised that there's always kind of a steady stream of conscientious objectors. Like CCW deals with in a normal year, meaning a year of kind of the peacetime or kind of normal U.S. level of intensity, about 50 to 80 conscientious objectors per year. All people who voluntarily joined the military and then at some point decided, I cannot even put on this uniform anymore. I feel so deeply wrong about what I am a part of. And so that's kind of the way things have been prior to the Iran war kicking off. So to bring us to kind of where we are now, and I will say that conscientious objection remains like the single most powerful tool for any service member who turns against war, or even a particular war, right? Of course, anyone can refuse orders to go to war. Of course, anyone can walk away from the military and go AWOL and deal with the repercussions that way. Kevin got kind of the worst case scenario for that. Year and a half in military brig, losing your benefits, that kind of sucks. But if it's what you have to do to not get sent to a war and kill people, probably the right decision. But conscientious objection, the regulations are on your side. And so it is an extremely powerful tool that service members have that most just simply do not know exist. But to why that's relevant to our conversation today is as soon as the Iran war began, we started receiving more calls than we ever have about service members wanting to know their rights to file as conscientious objection. And the counselors that work with us who have worked at CCW through the entire war on terror said that they have never seen anything like it. And so think about how bad the Iraq and Afghanistan wars got for U.S. casualties, for civilian casualties, for big political scandals of civilian killings like Abu Ghraib to Haditha to the Doctors Without Borders. But like there's so many examples of things that really shocked the public consciousness that you would expect to lead to certain kinds of spikes. Of course, U.S. service members dying, civilians dying. Those are the kind of things you would expect would lead to an increase in people wanting to file as conscientious objectors. As soon as the Iran war started, hundreds of soldiers were calling us, asking for rights about conscientious objection, which was more than at any point during the war on terror. And so that kind of indicates that there's something different about the way that people in today's military are thinking. The kind of things that we heard, the Manab girls' school bombing is by far the #1 thing that we hear from service members about kind of what was their breaking point, what was the moment that they realized they couldn't be a part of it anymore. Of course, frequently we hear from service members that they had been in some kind of moral crisis for months or years. We have a client right now who's been in the Army for 17 years, was in the Iraq War, Kevin and I's generation. And it's something that has built over time and reached a breaking point. And for some people, that breaking point comes very soon after you join the military and once you're exposed to the training and things like that. But for some, it takes a while to build, and everyone's story is different. We also have people who were really horrified by the United States destroying that Iranian vessel that was coming back from a military parade, basically. This is defenseless vessel that the U.S. not only destroyed, but broke international law and allowed everyone to drown in the ocean. In fact, we had a client whose job it was to do that. It was the radar operator on the ship whose job it was to help the targeting of the exact ship that would have blown up that ship. And so after that happened, he said, I can't do my job anymore. I could never do anything like this. And he was a few weeks away from deploying to Operation Epic Fury. And because he filed his CO packet when he did, we were able to keep him off of that deployment. And he's now on the track to get an honorable discharge. Some other significant people I want to mention that may surprise people that this is happening because these people aren't doing these things publicly. The Iraq War era had had a good number of kind of public war resistors from within the military and things like that. So it kind of might give the indication that that's not happening now because that's what we came to expect from Vietnam and the Iraq War. But just 4 recent clients I wanted to mention. There's a person on the ship. We had a Marine in the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. That's the unit that would presumably be the invasion force of Karg Island or the Iranian mainland or whatever wild contingencies Trump has had the Pentagon come up with. This is kind of an elite unit. He filed about a week or so ahead of his deployment, and we were able to get him off of that deployment. And that was a difficult thing for him because he was a career service member. And then he was telling all his brothers, I can't do this with you guys. We actually right now we're working with someone who was just on the USS Tripoli, like the forward most deployed attack ship in the conflict, who was an officer on the Tripoli. And 2 weeks ago wrote us and said, I can't do this anymore. I can't do my job anymore. We were able to intervene and we got them on the first available helicopter off the ship. And now they are back preparing their CO application back in Okinawa, Japan. We had a service member who was hours in the 82nd Airborne Division, hours away from deploying to the Middle East. We were not able to keep them home because their command was already gone. There was not the person there to make that call, but they've deployed without a weapon because they have an application in, even though they were sent anyway, they are not doing any duties that conflict with their beliefs, which means not carrying a weapon in a combat zone, which in itself is its own kind of bravery and heroism. And in fact, just days ago, they had their conscientious objector hearing in the combat zone. And I think the first hearing that we tried to do with them was postponed because they were taking incoming fire. And so these are the kind of things that are happening. I mentioned hundreds contacted us, over 100 have officially started the process, but many are in these very precarious situations, like forward deployed situations. And it's not just of course, the Iran war is the single biggest reason, but we have several people who have been filing as CEOs because of Trump's operations in Latin America and the Caribbean. We have a new client who is on the ship that was launching the munitions at Venezuela when the raid to kidnap the head of state happened. We had someone that we just got home who was deployed as security forces in Latin America in these anti-drug operations, where, you know, as a part of those operations, the U.S. blew up a dairy farm and killed a bunch of farmers that they said was producing cocaine, and others that are in the Navy who, you know, are in some ways involved directly or indirectly or just associated with the organization that's just blowing up fishermen anytime they feel like it. And actually a new Intercept article just showed that some of the people killed in these strikes in the Caribbean killed possibly some victims of human trafficking. And so I think it's important to talk about those scenarios because I think it shows the potential for anti-war advocacy and intervention. I would say that most of the people that called us did not know that these rights existed at all, but found them through social media or people sharing the information with them because they had seen something or a flyer at Fleet Week, and other types of physical outreach that has been done. And so, you know, those of you, whether you have proximity to a military base or an opportunity like Fleet Week to help put up posters and leaflets. And so, you know, it's like with people who are becoming CEOs, it's nobody had to go out and convince them. It's something that they knew deep inside. Like they heard the voice of their conscience. They knew that something was wrong. They knew that they had a bad feeling about what they were a part of, but didn't know that it had a name. Didn't know that the voice that they heard had a name, the conscience. Didn't know that their objection, because of that voice, had a name, conscientious objection. That there are rules and regulations that assist you and organizations that help you through that process as well. And so I think it's important to not only do the anti-war advocacy, but to spread the information that there are options for people who have this feeling. And all we do at CCW all day is talk to people who have these feelings and help them through every step of that kind of difficult and confusing and oftentimes intimidating process of filing. And so I'm sure there are questions that people have about that. I'm happy to answer them, but that's the best possible overview I think I could give you of our work over the decades and in the last 2 months.
Thanks, Mike, for that tremendous information. And I hope you'll give us the contact information for people who have sons or daughters who are deployed, who may be thinking along these lines, on who they can get in touch with. That would be great to be able to share with everyone who's registered for tonight's webinar. We're gonna, for our last speaker tonight, we're very happy to have with us John Schuchard. I mentioned that John resigned from the Marines over the deployment of U.S. troops to Vietnam in 1965. And for 50 years thereafter, he has been active with the plowshares, direct disarmament actions, trials, imprisonments. You name it, John has been there. He's a member of AFSC, of Mass Peace Action, Veterans for Peace. He helped realize the construction of 4 peace pagodas with the Japanese Buddhist order, Nipponzan Mihajoshi. And in 2010, he participated in a citizen diplomacy delegation to Iran. In 2019, he was part of the Global Network delegation to Russia. So we're talking about someone who's got incredible experiences and has done so much for the world with those experiences. If people have been to the House of Peace, you realize what an incredible operation this is, and caring for people from different countries who have mainly various types of wounds from wars, or just terrible situations that they've been in. And the House of Peace has been a place where they can find a home, at least for a while. So, John, thank you for being with us tonight, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. I think you're muted, John.
I'm technophobic. First, a greeting to Bahar. I want to tell you, Bahar, my heart is one with your heart. I had the great opportunity to be in Persia in 2010 with the great activist David Hartsow, who gave his life for the abolition of war. The Iranian people love their civilization. They love their children. They love their, one of the things I remember most is the deep, deep love and reverence for their poets. And of course, we were there trying to avert this current catastrophe. I want to just offer some generalizations. Forgive me, I've typed them out because I have a tendency to ramble, but people ask me, where are we? What's going on? Where are we going? And what can you say? I fall back on Pete Seeger. I say we are neck deep in the big money. And the old fool says, press on. Or I go to Charles Dickens. It's the best of times. It's the worst of times. It's springtime of hope. It's the winter of despair. So our time now is for certain a time of lawlessness, criminality in high office, barbarism, shock and awe, torture, Guantanamo, Gaza. Gaza is the moral compass of the world, and humanity has failed Gaza. It's a winter of despair. The essence of a lawyer of law, of course, graduating from law school, part of the reason I refused the invasion of Vietnam. And remember, none of us had ever heard of Vietnam. We didn't know where it was. It could have been in Africa, South America. Who knew? Couldn't find it on a map. But I knew that self-defense is an extremely, extremely limited defense. And somebody might come beat you up. You can't go back across town and burn down his house. That's not self-defense. The essence of law and morality is that civilians, the innocent, must not be harmed. Yet with indiscriminate weapons, the dead and terrorized are overwhelmingly civilians. It's the demographics. Half the children in Iraq half of the population was children under 14. Half of the other half are women. If you're bombing from B-52s, who are you going to kill? And of course, indiscriminate weapons are ipso facto absolutely illegal. So the slaughter now of children, of the school, of mothers and journalists and rescue workers is greeting us every day. And we are all suffering moral injury. During the Second World War, the Casablanca Directive ordered the skies full of British and American bombers to exterminate the civilian populations of the German and Italian cities. This is on record. This is written history. When that was perfected at Dresden, the firebombing, that was shifted to Japan. All these beautiful Buddhist monks grew up in the starvation of Japan after the extermination bombing of their cities. As Hiroshima survivor Setsuko Thurlow said, the acquisition of nuclear weapons are not the elevation of the nation to greatness, but the descent to the deepest, darkest depths of human depravity. We're going to have to face this. In law, there's a sharp distinction between victim and perpetrator. And with this in mind, I ask everyone listening, everyone on this panel, has the U.S. ever not been the aggressor, not been the invader of foreign lands? Can anyone think of a case of actual self-defense since the Casablanca Directive of January 21, 1943, or maybe since 1492? War is a lie born of lies, born of false flags like the Gulf of Tonkin, the World Trade Towers, 1, 2, and 7, WMDs, or now just plain dumb lying. War is terrorism, a racket, said General Butler. I was a gangster for Wall Street. Today, our great hope is the conscience and compassion inherent in every human being and alive in soldiers like Kevin, Jeff, Mike, who say no, which is not negative. It is their mighty yes to life, to love. Mighty yes. During the 10 years bringing down the hell fires on the innocents of Indochina, it was the resistance, the refusal, as Paul said, the leadership of the soldiers who came home that awakened the nation. I remember a search and destroy mission carried out at Park Street Station. Yeah. Unacknowledged thousands of moral heroes refused orders, went AWOL, sabotaged, mutinied, fled to Canada, and ultimately ended up fragging, tossing grenades into the tents of the officers. My friend George was going to shoot his platoon leader. He knew no other way out of the atrocities that he was being ordered daily to commit. Today, as mentioned, we face totally new circumstances. How do we read the signs of the times? What is our zeitgeist? There is today a zeitgeist moving in the people, and I'll speak about that. But there's no draft. There's not the forced conscription of the teenagers of my generation. And so-called war does not involve soldiers by and large. It's technological, industrial murder, mostly missiles, airplanes, drones. And how do we come to grips with this demonic, unspeakable evil? I firmly believe that we have our mightiest and greatest prophets, President Kennedy, Malcolm X, Dr. King, and President-to-be Robert Kennedy, accessible to us. And I don't know, it shows up on the screen in reverse, but
We get it.
okay. James W. Douglas has resurrected these processes. This is not a whodunit. This is who were they? Who were these four leaders? And it's the single most important book, I believe, for our times now. It's just reviewed by VVAW. The reviewer, John Ketwick, said it was the most important book he read in his lifetime. It's a testament of hope, companion piece to the Sermon on the Mount, which I hope people begin to read again in the churches. But Jim says it plain. Hope lies in confronting the unspeakable. That's from Thomas Merton. We must confront the four bloody public CI murders, the killers of the hope, the killers of the dream, the systems that murdered them must be held accountable. And there is a straight, unbroken line from these four assassinations to the 3 World Trade Towers. I could speak at length about that. Our great theologian, David Ray Griffin, has spelled it all out. To those implosions and to the current destabilization of our nation. Let's recognize we have suffered the classic CIA, the nation divided against itself, a house divided against itself must fall. We have been destabilized. And separation of powers is a thing of the past. And $1 trillion for war, and you can't feed the poor. And billionaires brazenly taking food out of the mouths of babes. Are we suffering moral injury? The churches hijacked by the Pied Pipers of patriotism. Christians still attempting to serve 2 masters, God and country. Flag idolatry, nationalism, displacing the love of neighbor. But Dr. King named war the most colossal of all evils and said that we are fully capable of overcoming the giant triplets of evil, racism, militarism, and economic exploitation. Our only hope today, Dr. King said, lies in our ability to recapture the revolutionary spirit and go out into a sometime hostile world, declaring eternal hostility to poverty, racism, and militarism. It's time to revive King's Declaration of Independence It is our manifesto and his manifesto for revolution, a revolution of values. And brothers, we men must recognize that the sickness of violence is overwhelmingly a male phenomena. This is a liberating truth. This isn't shame and guilt. This is a liberating truth. And we've got to face it and give the support to every sister who's fighting against war. Give all of our resources to recognizing that overwhelmingly it's women and children in the crosshairs. War, an unspeakable evil. Feminism, a reverence for women, a feeling for the sacred female, a reverence for motherhood, for children. Sophia, wisdom are the heartbeat of hope. And let us remember, we live in a lawful world. We can't have those who live by the sword will die by the sword. Under the laws of creation, we reap what we sow. These are eternal, immutable laws of the structure of reality. When those who sow the winds of war will reap the whirlwinds. And I think people are learning now that you can't have war and democracy. You're going to have to make a choice. We can't have war and human rights. You're not going to have war and a future for our children. It's time to take the risks and pay the price. So I have been deeply inspired. I do have hope by the rising resistance within the military, including, as Kevin said, within the commanders, within the command structure. I mean, let's pray for a coup, a military takeover. No, I don't mean that. But there is a movement of compassion and conscience and common sense and sense of violating their sense of duty and goodness that pervades. I'm inspired by the courageous student encampments. I was tremendously inspired. My spine was tingling night and day with those encampments. And I'm inspired by the spirit of Minneapolis. Isn't that fantastic? And the spirit of Massachusetts with the clergy and the lawyers and the citizens surrounding the ICE kidnapping operation in nearby Burlington. And inspired by the 4 peace pagodas, the last one built on the very fence line of the Trident submarine, the largest concentration of nuclear weapons in the world. Inspired by the Jewish and Israeli voices crying out for ceasefire and reconciliation. The whole world inspired by the heroic flotilla sailors attempting to bring food and medicine. Finally, inspired by Pope Leo. Says it plain, says it clear, says it to people of all belief. God does not listen to the prayers of those who wage war. Even though you may make many prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are full of blood. God does not listen to those who wage war. Their hands are full of blood. So thank you for the great hope and inspiration that's coming forth from all the work of everybody here. Thank you so much.
John, thank you so much for the wisdom and for the hope and for the enthusiasm that things can be better, that we can get on a different path. We're very close to out of time, but I think we do have time, hopefully, for 2 quick questions. First from Elizabeth Fatah, and then from Jeffrey Bachtel. Let's start with them, and then let's see what time it is at that point. So, Elizabeth, can we unmute Elizabeth Cole?
Am I unmuted?
No, you're all set now.
Okay, thank you. My name is Elizabeth Ashley Fatohipur. I use Fatah because it's a shortened of my name. I'm married to an Iranian. I lived in Iran during the Shah. And that was another problem. And that was because the Iranian people had elected a Democrat And of course, the British and Americans got rid of them. And they put the Shah in power because he wanted to nationalize the oil, and among other things. The reason I belong to several peace organizations. I'm in San Diego right now. That's where I live. And what I wanted to know, I've been here in San Diego. We've had these No Kings demonstrations, which is very frustrating because they never ask for anything. The only thing they're concerned about is Trump. And there is really very little, except a few groups do put up signs, et cetera, et cetera. But to me, it's frustrating that there's not a larger anti-war, anti-imperialism, all get together group. For one thing, when I was at the last meeting, I asked the organizers, there was no leaflet. I said, you didn't have a leaflet? He said, well, it was too complicated. I said, really? Too complicated? There was no singing, no songs, no music. So, which I remember from the past of anti-war demonstrations.
Excuse me, Elizabeth, you're making some really good points, but could you just,
Yeah,
we
and
have
that's
one
it.
more
I just
question,
wanna
just if you have a
know
question.
How, and again, and Milkins is coming up again.
Yeah.
What should we do? I mean, how can we influence them to really not just be part of the Democratic Party, but beyond the Democratic Party?
Excellent question. Do we have, do our panelists like to answer that? Otherwise, I'm gonna.
Go ahead, Paul.
Kevin, Michael, John, what do you think?
I went to the one last year and I just used it as a vehicle to try to recruit some people for about face. So that's the benefit that I saw from it. But the answer to that question, how to turn it from something other than a Democratic Party vehicle, that's a big question. So I'll let somebody else take a chance at that.
Well, the fact is that people in No Kings, most of them are very much against war. Whenever we've been at those events, people swarm the anti-war tables to get information, to sign petitions, you name it. And so we have to take advantage of the fact that most of the people in those kings are also horrified by what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Iran, and they would do anything to figure out a way to act. And so we have to have our peace organizations present at those places. And we're allowed to do that, at least in Massachusetts. And so get out there, be visible, draw people, let people know that they're not alone in the way they're thinking, and that that if we work together, we can accomplish something as we have in the past on a number of occasions. But keep going to those No Kings marches, but keep pushing them on the issue of war and peace. Push, push, push. Don't let them rest until they hear that and put the speakers up on the platform. Okay, let's go to Jeffrey. I think let's go to Jeffrey, and then we'll see how long our panelists can hang in there and how much our audience can. Jeffrey, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Originally, I thought Iran was evil, but after a closer look, I realized I was wrong. Now that they're just like us in a way. They may be different, but we're all the same human beings. But
Yes.
But how do I join if you so I can help out, if you know what I mean? Because I really want to help and get the military to follow not to disobey illegal orders, if you know what I mean, because it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's wrong. It's just wrong. And really, just hear it from all of you really gave me that inspiration to want to be part of what you guys are doing. You know?
Yeah. That's great,
I just-
Jeffrey. Anyone would like to respond to Jeffrey?
Sure. Well, from, of course, joining demonstrations when they happen and where they happen and getting involved with the local organizations that are doing them is always important and something that is probably available to you where you are locally. When it comes to our work at CCW, like I mentioned, things that may seem passive, putting up brochures and leaflets somewhere, helping share social media stuff, making donations to the organization. These are things that actually have yielded just huge results. We find that more people, of course, one of the reasons we had this surge in CO applicants, the Iran war was the catalyst for that surge. But the bigger our reach got, the more people reached out. So the vast majority, we maybe tapped 1% of people in the military found out about our hotline and that you can call for information about CO rights. The more we were able to expand our visibility, the more people called us, which means most service members don't know about these rights and this free service. But the more that find out, the more that call and become war resistors. So there are many more hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the military right now who would be exercising these rights if they knew that they existed. So, there's various ways in which you can find new ways to make sure more service members know about those rights. If you have friends of friends in the military or family of friends in the military and things like that, those connections have yielded huge results for us of just word of mouth through family members and friends. Our website, centeronconscience.org, we have downloadable outreach materials if you live near bases or where soldiers train or where the National Guard is. Those things are always helpful. But it's just things that you may think are insignificant in that regard can lead to more and more people signing up. And when you have one person in a unit files a CO, that can also lead to other people in their unit knowing from what they did and doing. And we've had multiple cases of that, of people who the word spreads because one person finds out and then they let others know in their unit, or they do it themselves and others find out that they did it. So I think there's a lot of untapped potential with making sure more and more people know that this is something that that is available to them. But of course, there's multiple. That's just one side. That's direct services helping people in the military and kind of building and not just building an anti-war network and community within the military, but giving people real options to disrupt it, to not have to take part in it. And the more people that do that, the more disruptive it becomes for the military itself. But yeah, of course, one of the things that inspires those people to take action, or one of the things that helps them find out about it even, is the presence of anti-war actions in the United States and in their community. And yeah, it does seem contradictory that, when the Iraq War was starting, there were, I'm sure most of you remember, like the biggest anti-war protests in world history were taking place at that time. In the United States, huge mass demonstrations of hundreds of thousands of people all around the country in coordinated ways, when the vast majority of Americans supported the war. Public opinion was for the war, yet there were still these massive and powerful and hugely significant demonstrations. Public opinion now is against the war in Iran. Like nobody wants to invade Iran, and a significant majority of people are opposed to this operation, yet we don't still see the same translation in street actions. And so that shouldn't discourage us, but I think that should just show that the sentiment is there. We don't know what will be a catalyst for things blowing up and exploding, but it's important to be ready and be doing the kind of often thankless work of doing things like this to kind of keep that flame alive for when mass consciousness enters into that same congruent with it.
Yeah, thanks very much on that, Michael. Kevin, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I would just like to add that if you are near a military installation anywhere, if you know where some of the service members may have leisure activities like softball fields or coffee shops or anything like that, they would be a lot more approachable in that relaxed atmosphere than if they're at a military base. So if you just happened out and you see some, you may run across one or two that may be receptive to taking information for either the General Conscience of War, or you can direct them to About Face Veterans Against the War or via Veterans for Peace. So there's some avenues and resources that we have available for them if you send them our way. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Maybe you guys should run for office, if you know what I mean. Because that might be a good start. Good start.
Yeah, a lot of people are taking that road, Jeffrey. And in Massachusetts, we have some awfully good people running for office now that the peace movement has been vetting. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be getting you that information. And also, Jeffrey, we'll be sending, along with the recording of this program, some ideas of how you can get involved in one way or another. So thanks for asking that question. I'm going to violate all common sense and take one more question, even though it is now 20 minutes to 9. So if we could just take one question, I apologize for those others we won't get to, but could Ann Fawcett Ambia be allowed to ask her question?
Hi,
Hi,
I'm a
Ann.
member of Military Family Speak Out. Thank you very much. I want to talk about another form of resistance. I marched with Vietnam Veterans Against the War in 1976 for the 200th anniversary of this country. It was very powerful. It's very powerful when veterans stand up and speak out against war. People listen, and that I just want to say, I mean, then my son got courted post 9/11, signed up for the military, was first deployed in 2007, allegedly Kuwait, but really Iraq, and then 3 more times after that. What we're dealing with now, besides the Marines, you know, whose lives are endangered based on whatever Trump decides he's going to do, we have National Guard kids who were deployed into the Gulf states. And when they were evacuated, when Iran retaliated against our unbelievably illegal, horrible war, they were not sent home. They were sent to Jordan and Kuwait, where they're still in danger, where their return dates are being extended. The people who were the Guard, you know, troops that were supposed to go over to replace them, their orders are on hold. These kids are still over there, don't know when they're coming home. I talked to a mother and wife, both members of Military Family Speak Out now, whose son is in Jordan. So this leads me to the 250th anniversary. The only mention that came out so far was about fundraising for Philly for July 4th. But we need to focus on this. We need to get, you know, Veterans for Peace and Military Family Speak Out and everybody else, Iraq Veterans Against the War, About Face, into Philly marching and speaking out, because I think that's another form of very powerful resistance that this country needs to see. And I'm waiting for, I mean, the only flyer I've seen about this demonstration is very vague. It's come to Philly, everything is TBA, where the march is going to be, where the housing is going to be, what the transportation is going to be. Could somebody please talk about the specifics of getting out to Philadelphia for the 250th anniversary of this country? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ann, for the question. Any thoughts that anyone has about getting people to be excited about going to Philadelphia? I know there's going to be a lot of local things in Massachusetts and Concord and Lexington and places like that. But you're right, it'd be important to have one big national presence of protest. And Kevin, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, hang on just a second. Yeah, we're going to have this thing that Jeff did mention it earlier. We're going to be in Philly on the 4th of July. And there's going to be some military family speak out. There's going to be some 50-51 veterans involved. There's going to be VFP veterans involved, and there's going to be, I believe, some common defense. And I don't know the names of the other local organizations that are going to be involved, but if you want to ride up and join us on July the 4th in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, we can sure use your help. The more the merrier. Thank you.
Kevin, can you send us some information, any information you have about where things are going on in Philadelphia, what the time spaces are, whether it's a day-long thing, any specifics that you come across, if you could send them to us at Mass Peace Action so that we can get those out to people, that would be most appreciated. I think we better close our program, folks. Is it morning yet? No. And I want to thank our wonderful panelists, the great ideas. Thanks, Nancy, especially for putting this together. And we have a lot of work to do, but just from what we hear tonight, we know that the people are out there, really wonderful people who know the score, who are willing to do things, and we just have to support those people and increase their numbers. And so let's get to work. Thanks again. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning in tonight. And we've got all kinds of wonderful other webinars coming up. Jeffrey, thanks for your good questions tonight. And we'll see everyone soon.